can't carry everything. You're going to give something up. And what I started to realize in that moment was how much fear controlled a lot of what I felt. I think sometimes parenting, fear has been like the driver. And then that night I went to Jalen and it was just like, hey man, like I need you to know, like you're going to be okay. Like you're going to be totally fine. We don't recognize how much things can impact us in moments. IEDs get formed underneath that pain. When you don't disarm them, you're going to end up blowing up relationship. You're going to blow yourself up and you're going to blow the relationships around you up. Hey, what's up, guys? I want to welcome you back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It is your boy, Adrian here. I am joined by the one, the only...
Breezy.
I can't even give a good introduction anymore because you're just always just butting in, but Breezy.
Yep, before this podcast, he told me to stop talking and just don't talk until the podcast starts. And then whenever I talk, when the podcast starts, he's mad that I'm talking when the podcast starts.
So everybody gets to see our
real interactions.
Our real interactions, absolutely. Well, hey, if you are new here to the New Rules community, welcome. This is how we get. This is how we get down. Again, we are glad you're here. Here to the New Rules in our podcast and really this community. It's all about unlocking authenticity. We believe that really that is the future. Is really what the world is in desperate need of is authentic leaders. And so we define authenticity as self-awareness, resilience to remain self-aware, and also the ability to go empower others. And so we're excited to have you here. Welcome. Come on in. Get comfortable. Sit
on in.
You know what I'm saying? Sit on the living room furniture. Get yourself something to drink. Your family here. So, but yeah, we are truly, truly excited. Again, we are on episode 26. I mean, we just started this. It's something that Bree has been pushing us to do and pushing me to do, and so excited that we have been doing it. It's crazy we're already on episode 26, and again, a lot of feedback, a lot of positive stuff, and so hopefully it's been really helpful for people. Let us know, and yeah, so from there.
So, there's been something I've been wanting to ask you about that you've briefly mentioned on the podcast before.
All right.
It's a little funky.
It's a little funky. As my middle child said, it's like you're in your white people bag right now.
Yeah. So you've started something called somatic therapy.
Yeah, I have. Yes.
And I'm laughing, but it's actually been really great for you. I personally have seen the benefits that it's provided. Can you share a little bit about what it is and why you started it?
Yeah. Somatic therapy. So I'm still trying to figure out all of what it is.
What is it exactly?
Yeah. It's so pretty much, I mean, from what I could do, and again, it's not if you've heard of it, there may be different ways you've seen it, but with the person that I actually use, she is phenomenal, and really it's a hybrid of, there's some talk therapy parts of it, but a lot of like there's breath work, a lot of visualization, but the other part is a lot of movement, stretching, things like that. But it's a lot more like deep tissue, and there's movements to it, and there's these bands kind of sheet she uses and moves you, and it sounds wild. I mean, because and every time you come into something kind of different. But it has been really, really helpful because I think more than anything else, as I've been saying, one of my theme for this year is really been practicing being present. So in there, it's usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I don't take anything in there, meaning like my phone, my watch, nothing. So for about 2 hours, I'm completely disconnected from the world. I've learned a lot of like silence and solitude and meditation is another part, which has been a huge thing I've been doing in my life now. And it's because the reason why I started going there was just because of some of the things I've talked on the podcast of like earlier this year, finding out having Graves' disease and just body being so out of whack. And some of that was due to the fact of, I think, just kind of the pace I was running at. And again, the pace I'm running at, I'm not talking about hours at work or things like that. It's more of just the actual it's the knowing where you end and the next person begins, a lot of emotional carrying of things like that. And so I had to really rewire my body. And so I've been kind of doing that, and it's been really, really helpful. And I'm super thankful for actually doing it, but it's different. And this year I wanted to try something. I wanted to try different things. I wanted to say, hey, this is, it's a little bit more Eastern in kind of the method of it. And so I just took a dive at it. It's actually been, really helpful.
So what emotional benefits have you seen from it?
Yeah, good question. The emotional benefits I've really seen has been being really it's taught me again to be in the moment. It's taught me as well to really unpack some things. Now, again, I did therapy for 3.5 years, and I really do believe I had one of the leading therapists in the country who actually I walked through that stuff with. So it's a lot different because you're doing a lot more visualization, breathwork, stuff like that. But there are moments where I've been in it where we do some deeper dives, like even today, as I did it this morning, and we did none of the floor stuff. It was just a lot more like talk stuff because I had a few things come up, and we just really worked through it. But it's really helped me tap into understanding even a deeper measure, how I feel, what's driving it, but then also learning how to, I think the biggest part is just like you're saying, learning where I end and the next person begins, knowing how to guard my yard. That's probably the biggest word I kind of use, is learning how to guard my yard, learning how to emotionally, physically guard what's really important so that I can be the absolute best. It's not guarding my yard so that I can just, people say, well, just self-care. And a lot of times we just do that for just the sake of self. But you want to take care of yourself so that you can be the best, so you can actually go use your skills, gifts, and talents to go help others. And so that's what's been really helpful. It's taught me how to say no a lot. It's taught me how to just kind of be more in the moment. So it's been really helpful.
Can I ask you a more personal question about
Absolutely.
it? And part of why I asked this is because the approach that we take as an agency to the work that we do, we call it emotional experiential. And so one of the things that we don't really love doing is spending a ton of time just teaching subjects and topics like lecture style. And so I think one of the things that we can do to help the podcast be a more emotionally experiential is through storytelling and actually sharing real personal examples of what it is that we're talking about. So would you mind sharing, I know that you're talking about, guard your yard, which makes sense, but some of it is also vague. So would you mind sharing a little bit more about a particular situation that you walked in, whatever you did that was helpful, and then the difference in how you felt whenever you were walking out?
Yeah. Okay, so this was I wouldn't say several weeks, but probably a month ago. I go in and I can't actually remember what was kind of the moment, because she'll ask me hey, how are you? So the first thing she asked me, she's like, how are you feeling in your body? Because what started to happen a lot, I started feeling everything in my body, my stress. I started feeling my body. And so as the doctor started going through all the stuff, it wasn't Graves related or heart related. It was none of that stuff. And so what we've kind of narrowed it down to, it was literally stress. So I started to carry all of it in my body. So meaning my lower back, where all of a sudden, I think we were out in California when it happened, where all of a sudden my back was just I thought I was out of alignment or whatever. So I started, doing stuff working out wise. And then I started actually, going to chiropractor, and it still was I had these moments that get super tight. Anyway, so I carry it in my body, and stuff like that. So anyway, so she asked me how I was doing. I don't remember what it was, but it was really one of those heavy moments where my body was just hurting. And so what we started unpacking, I remember that it got to this issue of this idea of fear. And what she had me do is she's I want you to visualize back in a moment where you remember fear at a very high level. And I started talking about when I have an older brother, I have an older half brother, and I have and my father. Their relationship was really contentious at times. And what I would do is I'd put headphones on, to kind of drown out when they would kind of get in their back and forth or whatever. And she asked, why was that fear? Because it was again, my dad's me, big dude, my brother's a big dude, strong guy, both of them. So it's you were worried about something's going to happen. Anyway, so she was well, asked me about the fear. So can you go back and visualize that? And da-da-da-da. So I was doing that. But then it was very weird. So I'm doing this. So part of me, I'm dude, this stuff is stupid. It's kooky. Yeah. I'm this is the most white people thing ever, right? Sorry, Bree, and Grady. But I was this is the most. But as I kept doing it, what I started realizing, I was sitting there, and I'm and I'm not making this up. I'm kind of just I'm not the guy to overhype something or over or this is going on. If it's real, it's real. So I kept my eyes, I was kind of doing this, and I've been working on it. All of a sudden, I started having this kind of outside of, she's like, who's outside the door? What are you so fearful for? And I remember thinking about, there was a kid when I was like in the 7th grade, used to like kind of, he's like one of those kids was held back a couple grades, you know what I'm saying? So stronger than everybody else. Like my man was driving to school, smoking blacks on his way, you know, like in the 7th grade. And so my man, it was him, because I used to get bullied by him. And it was like, I was fearful to open up the door. And then she was like, I want you to visualize going to open that door. And it was one of those situations, but it's you now. And so like I go, I do this, and it's like, what are you saying? And I literally, and this whole thing is going, I'm like lost in it now. I'm like really pushing him out of my house, like just pushing him down. All like kicked him out. I mean, visualizing my house growing up, blah, 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 down the stairs of blah, blah, whatever. Come back, and then here's where we'll end. She comes in, she's like, I want you to go back in there and tell that, because it's like, she's like, how old were you? I was like around like 12 or 13. She's like, I want you to go back and tell that 12 or 13-year-old, like, you're going to be okay. And I was like, it was like, you're so in the moment. And so I do that, and I'm telling you, like, I open the door, like, I mean, I'm visualizing this whole thing, but when I opened the door, it was my son, it was Jalen. It was actually him that I visualized. And what I started to realize in that moment was how much fear, like, controlled a lot of what I felt. And a lot of what I did was, like, fear-based. Fear was always there. Even the successful things I've done, fear has been the motivating thing for me. I think sometimes parenting, fear has been, like, the driver. And I felt like I needed to do that. And so, like, from that moment, I mean, it was, like, one of those moments where, like, it was so enlightening. And, like, I come to it, I'm just like, what just happened? But I felt like this relief in my body. And then that night, I went to Jalen, and it was just like, hey, man, like, I just need you to know, like, you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to be totally fine. I know you have these fears, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a turning point, honestly, for him even. And so, like, that's where it kind of went to. And again, I cannot explain some of this stuff, because I used to think this stuff was stupid. It was hokey. It was like, yo, this is just people kind of wanting to, you know, just make money doing something else. But when you learn how to do that, it's really powerful. And more than anything else, what it's teaching you like your discipline of your mind. That's more than anything else. The meditation parts is just the discipline of your mind, learning how can you get yourself to a place of just where your mind's free, and learning how to do that. And it's really teaching me just a greater way of being present. I find myself, my body feels better. I find myself even being able to solve problems a lot faster, because I'm able to discipline. Somebody who's very ADD, I'm able to focus my mind a lot faster. And so, yeah, that's kind of why it's been there. So it's been pretty cool.
And I'm still asking questions on this topic because of how much it relates to the topic we're going to actually talk about today. What do you think kept you from realizing that, one, your body felt that way, and that you held so much fear for so long?
I think when you're in it, you just drive. You have stuff to get done, right? I mean, especially when you're a business owner, people are you have the responsibility for people, and you also have dreams and goals and KPIs, all that. Like, you're just driving. And then what happens is, after a while, you're not meaning to do it, but you just wake up one day, you're like, yo, like, my body's not in a great place, you know? I also think, too, coming to the realization that I talk a lot about this, but I think it's because I've had to live it recently, is that understanding you can't carry everything. You're going to give something up. So I neglected for a long time, physically, things, in order to drive other things. And what I realized, that was a cost. Now, there was other benefits to that. I think, it's not that if you can't take care of your body and run something successful. It's not that. It was just, I was so focused, and I was doing so much emotional work that I didn't do the physical thing. And so in that, it just all kind of coincides. So I think for a while, I was just so focused on just those other things and not realizing, because it really wasn't hitting my body yet at that level, until one day it just did. It's kind of like, as an athlete, you're playing, and then all of a sudden you just start to realize, like, maybe it was hurting you a little bit, but not as bad. But then one day you're like, no, my hamstring's jacked. And you're like, I can't play now. And that's what I felt like. I felt like my body's like, okay, we're all done here. And here's the truth about it. Some people will ask me, like, man, yeah, there's things I would have done a little bit, I would have done different. But this is just the process, this is the process you have to walk through. And so I'm actually, thankful I walked through it, and, and now we're here.
Thank you for sharing. That's helpful.
No, I appreciate it. Well, hey, let's jump to the pod today.
So lately we've been in a series called I've Got a Story to Tell, and our last podcast was about where did you come from. So today we're going to focus on where are you now, and then our next one will be about where are you going. Yeah. But within the where are you now, we are going to focus on a topic on emotional IEDs. Yep. So can you share a little bit about how that topic came to fruition?
Yeah, several years ago, there was a movie that came out called The Hurt Locker, starring Jeremy Renner, and he was an improvised explosive device kind of expert during the Iraqi war, during the Iraqi war. And so what he did was he would go in and, again, these improvised explosive devices are stuff that really majority of the deaths that happened during our time in Afghanistan and Iraq were from IEDs. And what they are, just they're explosive devices that are hidden under things, stuff like that, and they're really bombs. And so his whole job in there was to go and to deactivate them, to defuse them. But he would go and he was there, and then he would go back home. So he would do the whole thing, take his tour, and then go home. And what they were showing in the movie is he could never really adjust at home. He was so used to being in that high-pressure situation. And what I found interesting was that he couldn't really get back into civilian life because he had another set of IEDs that he couldn't fix. He could literally, he was the best at diffusing these and saving lives. But when it came to actually in his own life, I started looking as I was watching, man, he has his own emotional IEDs that are like blowing things up. And so because of that, like he can't even help himself. And so it made me start thinking about this idea that how we all have those. We all have improvised explosive devices that lay beneath the surface in our own lives that I think many times can blow our lives up, can damage us, and that we don't even know that they're actually there, like how real IEDs are.
Can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, I think that, it could be, I'll start from a personal standpoint. The idea that, when you feel growing up, when I felt like I was kind of always like overlooked, right? And so because I was always overlooked, there was always that, man, I got to prove myself. So because of that idea of being overlooked, that's something that was a moment. And there were some real reasons why that was in my life. Well, what that can lead to is anytime I can feel overlooked, I can have a highly charged emotional response. Well, if it's overlooked, I feel like I'm overlooked by my wife. Feel like I'm overlooked by someone who is a client, or feel like I'm overlooked by a friend or whatever, or any type of situation, it can create a highly charged situation and allow me to respond in a manner that's negative, a manner that can be harmful, not only to me, but to those around me. And so that's a very practical one for me personally. If everyone thinking, you can just kind of go through the list. I would ask you, what would be one for you that you could think in your own life?
For me, it's, and I haven't figured out the common thread because it doesn't happen all the time, but there are times whenever I'm being questioned where to me it feels like belittlement, which leads to like these people don't believe me, and they don't believe in me. And so for me, why I have such a charged response to that is because I grew up in an environment where I was the kid saying, the house is on fire, the house is on fire. Gotcha. And the adults are saying, no, it's not. Gotcha. And so every time I might not be, but if I feel like I'm in that situation, I feel like I'm in danger. Okay. And so like by all means possible, I need to figure out how to get out of here alive.
No, and that's really good, because by recognizing that, it's also sometimes those are real things that you're actually feeling. And as a child and growing up, it was real. Now, the problem is that sometimes you're like, no, what you're experiencing is real. Sometimes it's just like, man, I just didn't do that right. So people are like, hey, they're questioning something because it wasn't maybe done right, whatever. And it could be like, and then your response could be, no, they just don't believe in me. They don't believe in me. And so, and again, I know you recognize this, that's how, for the listeners, like that's how if you can see it wrong, and that can end up leading you down a pathway also, you can see it right. And so I think those are the ways that, man, it really does impact people in many negative ways. But most people, even what we're talking about, they can't even recognize they have it. They just think, oh, this is just how the way I am.
Right. And I think to just play off of this example a little bit is even the times where that might be happening, like, let's just play that out.
Yep.
It's like never in a situation that is as like red flag as even what it was growing up.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like somebody who's, responsible for my nurturance and care is putting me in danger.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like if we're with a client and I'm like, oh, this person, they just like aren't listening to me because they think I'm a kid or like because I'm a girl, like, whatever that might be. Whereas like, let's say they do think that, the response that I have inside, like for me to allow that to even take me to a place where I suddenly feel like everything's questionable. Everything I think or feel or believe, whatever, is on the table now because what this one person said. Even when it does happen, like it's just a point to say, even when it can be happening, it's still the response that you're coming back at with is not always the right level.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's because it's always been just survival. And so you can just always been in an environment that's survival. Like, one of, one of my favorite albums is Jay-Z 444. And you can tell, we always joke about it. We're like, that's that's post therapy Jay-Z, you know what I mean? But he has like this, he talks about this. He was like, cry Jay-Z. Is like back in the day, you don't need an alibi, Jay-Z. And the whole thing he was saying, like, he said he was still living in a way because of how he grew up. He was still like, he's a billionaire. And he's still like in the back of his mind living like he needs an alibi because he used to be in a dope game. Like he needs an alibi or like, hey, you can't cry. That shows a sign of weakness. All that stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that stuff, even just because your environment changes, you still have the same way you respond. And I think for you, and I think for most of us, we have very highly charged responses to things, like you said, that aren't as highly charged as what actually put the IED there. You had there was a reason why that thing was placed there. And the high response should have been what your high response was when you were younger. But now it's not, but it still doesn't matter because it's just hard to tell. It's just really hard to tell because it feels the same. It feels the same exact way. And so that's what the thing about it, as you're becoming more aware of it, you're actually able to like work through that process and things like that. And I just think most people aren't even aware that this actually exists in their life.
Right. I'll say a few things that we've said before that can kind of be defined as emotional IED, for examples. I know we used our own, but we've talked about trauma, disappointment, any unmet expectations. A big one is any unprocessed life change. So things like COVID can lead to hope deferred, and a lot of what we just mentioned had to do with family dynamics. Yeah,
these things are all where IEDs can get planted. And again, there's probably other things. I mean, there's several other things you probably could put in there. But what these are, it's just like an IED had to be planted. And it had to have a container. Whenever they would make an IED, when they're making an actual real IED, there's some type of container that has to actually hold the bomb. And sometimes they would put them in anything. They would put them under like in a carcass, like a dead animal on the side of the road. They would have it in a car that was like kind of broken down, burned on the side of the road. It could be a trash. I mean, they put it in anything. Something has to be able to hold it. And for us, there has to be something that holds that thing. And usually it's us. It's our bodies. It's who we are. Just as the stuff we were talking about earlier, like fear was put in my body. And so like my body now was, it's carrying those things. And so, if it's trauma, unmet expectations, I mean, that's a huge one. Like, we talk about like hope deferred, where like you are believing and hoping for something and it doesn't happen. You expected someone to do something, it doesn't happen. Let's say you're married and all of a sudden that person walks out. That creates a whole dynamic of what that's creating an IED, because you're like, man, you were fully committed. You thought this person was fully committed and now they're not fully committed. And so what does that create inside of us? And what that leads to is then we don't process that well. And so IEDs get formed underneath that pain. And, and we just kind of have to still move through life though, right? You still got a job, or, if you're going through this and you're leading at your workplace, you still have employees looking to you as you do that. And most times we don't have room or space to actually process what's going on in that, which then those IEDs get planted deeper. And so next thing you know, somebody, just like anything else, that thinks somebody's going to walk past that and someone's going to trigger that and they're going to get you blowing up. And it really wasn't them. It was just this thing that's been there under the surface for a long time.
Yeah. One of the things I like about this analogy is that when you think of something that's imploding or exploding, no matter where the bomb was placed, it always has impact on the surrounding areas. And so I think even if it's something that's imploding, whatever is around it still has impact from that. Can you share a little bit about if somebody is a leader and they're beginning to identify these things, how that can actually begin to show up to the people around them?
Yeah. So let's just say, let's use kind of the example of what you were saying earlier, where when you were talking about for you personally, but let's just say somebody out there is working and they deal with the same thing, where they're like, man, I feel like, it may not be your situation, but they feel like, man, when somebody questions me, I have a highly charged response, right? Because I feel like they don't believe in me. They don't think I'm, whatever that thing is. Here's how that plays out. Let's say you're leading and now you have a subordinate, somebody who works for you, question your decision. Your response, if you feel that way internally, you're imploding because of that, your response will be either highly charged and you will shut them down. You won't listen. You'll make that idea stupid, whatever. You won't hear that idea. Or you'll go inward, you know what I mean? And then you'll start to question everything about yourself. They'll start seeing your own self-doubt because now they're questioning you. Then you're starting to question yourself, even though you felt really strong about the idea before. Now you're questioning everything. And now that impacts your leadership and what they think. And I think what it ends up doing is, meantime, it messes up team dynamics. And the team dynamics wasn't the fact of people say, oh, you're just not a great, that person, well, they're just not a good leader, a good listener. Well, I think a lot of times people want to be those things, but they don't know what's stopping them from hearing or listening or leading properly, or how they should show up. And so I think in a situation like, we were talking about earlier, you just don't hear anything or you don't hear anybody. And then that messes up people. Then if you bite their head off because of that, or you shut their idea down, then they're going to, limit it to coming and talking to you about their ideas because they're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that anymore. So it ends up impacting team dynamics. That's one. But let's just say one of the IDs that you may have in your life is just for whatever reason, you just really trust. Trust is a huge thing. It's a hard thing for you. So what you can end up doing is you can start something can trigger you, whether if it's from your boss or if it's you guys are in an uncertain time right now. Could there be layoffs? Could there not? To where now all of a sudden your lack of trust in any type of authority, because of whatever reason you had that, you can begin to question everything about your boss, the board, their vice president. You begin to question everything. So now all of a sudden your response to them, you start to treat them like somebody who violated your trust in your life. So now that messes up the relational dynamics. See, all these things at the end, it ends up messing up relational dynamics either way. Because sometimes people don't have highly charged. We always think about, okay, explosive. That means, man, you're coming there on you're on that 180. I'm about to go off. I'm screaming, cussing people out. Actually, sometimes it's people who don't speak up. Mm-hmm. The way it implodes inwardly, right. And they're just very quiet or they shut down. But they don't speak up. So here's what it does, though. Regardless of it, it messes up relationship. When you don't deal with these, when you don't disarm them, you're going to end up blowing up relationship. You're going to blow yourself up, and you're going to blow the relationships around you up. And let me tell you this. Life, work, all parts of your life is relationship. It is about the relationships you make. Everybody talks about it. It's not about what you know. It's who you know, right? That's an adage that people say all the time. Well, if you don't deal with these things, you start blowing up your relationships. They just don't understand me. I'm just keeping it real. No, who you are It's like you're like walking around with a bunch of bombs. Like, no, that's not okay, chief. Like, that's just who I am. No, if somebody walks in with a bunch of bombs, like, I'm not going to be around that. I don't care. That's just who you are. Who you are can just go sit somewhere and blow yourself up. Don't blow me up in the process. And I think that's important for people to know that some of the stuff that we'll say that this is just me may not be the best version of you. You got to do the work to see why. Why do you respond like this? And what we can do is just justify all the time. We justify with, you don't understand where I came from. This is just how I had to be. You see that sometimes in people in relationships, or like, again, you look like in a marriage or something like that, where all of a sudden somebody comes from a home where everybody was highly charged. You live with a bunch of siblings. You're always everybody's loud. And then it was very much like this. It's like you live that way. Everything's on edge and you live that way. Man, that impacts people. Why are you on edge? Do you ever talk about that? Do you ever get to it? Because that impacts you as a leader. Again, we always say this. Leadership is not about this performance thing. Leadership starts inward. Your performance comes when you do what the work inside. Your performance is going to be the performance, and it's going to be what it needs to be. But what we've been taught about leadership is outwardly perform and not deal with the inside. And that's why I think we've had these moments, and why I think we're in this leadership crisis we're in, because people have not done the internal work to deal with even these IEDs.
That was loaded.
That was very loaded.
That was loaded. In order to disarm an emotional IED, which we will get to, of course, you have to know that it's there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times it is buried. Yeah. What can it get buried under?
That's a really good question. I think that one of the things that gets buried underneath is, I think, just like the process of life. You have a moment that happens to you, but life is still like coming at you, right? Like, whether when you were younger or even now, we still can have IEDs planted in our lives, right? Think about during COVID or beyond COVID, somebody gets let off, somebody got let go. And you thought this is a job you've given your life to, you're committed to this place, you got your dream job, and then you get let go. That's an unmet expectation. That's painful. Even your boss may have told you, no, you of all people, we're definitely not letting you go. And then they let you go. So now what does that build? Man, you had your dream job, hope deferred. What else happens? Man, the person who you thought was rocking with you said, man, there's no way we're letting you go. And then a week later, you're getting let go. So now trust issues happen there. But here's the thing. You still got to go find another job. Like, you may be in you may be married, or you may be in a relationship, or you may have children. Okay, well, then you still have to, raise your kids. You still have to be a good spouse. You still have to do life on top of all the other worry of, now I got to go find another job and all that. What we'll do, we won't stop and process how that makes it. So we'll just keep going. So the busyness of life will just bury a lot of it, and we'll just kind of keep going. And what we'll do is we'll just say, man, we're on to the next thing. And so I think that's what happens a lot of times. I think people just keep just moving, and they don't stop. I think the other part of it is, I think it gets buried under being unaware. And what I mean by that is being unaware of how much it impacts you. I mean, I think, sometimes you're just in, it's like you're just in survival. And I think we don't recognize how much things can impact us in moments where our fear, our even here's another one, like the pride will come out where, all of a sudden, let's say you have trust issues because of, and again, I know I start talking about relationships and things like that. And we're on this pod talking about, about authentic leadership and work, but that's what impacts you. We're not just going to talk about hey, at your workplace in this meeting, no, all of a sudden, something happens in a love relationship or something like that, and you get your heart broken, that stuff is painful. And what we do is we just keep it moving. All right, well, hey, just, or our pride is no, I don't want to feel that pain. A lot of people, that's the other thing too. So it's we don't want to feel the pain to actually have to process it. So what we do is we just cover it up. We just cover it up with other stuff. We cover it up with busyness and on and on and on. So I just think life stuff happens. I think being unaware, and I think we just cover it up with with more and more busyness, more and more we start coming up with other hobbies. We start partying a little bit more. We start, we just say, I'm not going to think about it. We start going to positive affirmations. Don't think negative right now. Think positive. Let me tell you, what else buries it? Stupid friends. Like, stupid friends, bury it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know, like, stupid friends. Because here's what happens. It's the friends who tell you, like, all the time, like, oh, it's not you, it's him. Or, hey, you're the one, you know, at work, right? Like, you're late all the time. You do, like, halfway work. And your friend's like, man, like, you know, those people are going to realize how much they miss you because of how good you were. And you're like, no, you were buns. You were not good. Or, like, you were the problem in the relationship. And so you have stupid friends who won't, like, no, be empathetic, but won't tell you the truth. So then they're like, don't think. So then you're like, yeah. And then you don't want to think about that. Nobody wants to think that they're bad. So now you think about your bad. So now your friends are telling you, no, you're great. You know, no, you look great. And you're like, no, you don't. And like all that. And you try to move and you just don't think about it. You just say positive. And I'm like, no, sometimes you got to look at the negative to actually go there. So yeah, get some better friends.
Does a emotional bomb have to explode for you to realize that it's there? Like, because sometimes it feels like, you know, you're young and then you start to grow up a little bit and something has to explode to kind of shake you into oh wait, I actually need to pay attention to the path I'm on.
I don't think it has to be, let me say this. I don't think it has to be that, but a lot of times it is that early because there's little signs. Just like when you watch a movie that'll portray what's going on, that was happening in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they would see like IEDs. Like I was recently watching the show The Lioness, and it was at the beginning episode. It was about it was a beginning episode about, and it was like an IED that was there, and what they were doing was watching this guy walk, but they were like looking for all these signs. That wasn't, and then at the end they finally saw there was a sign because there was a cord that was buried underneath the sand. All this, I think there's signs all the time that it's there. We just don't know what we're looking for. So I think early, unless you listen to a podcast like this or something like that, or you have somebody in your life who's walked through there, like, hey, that's the thing. You need to look at that. Most of the time, people have to learn by something blowing up because either you're just not aware. Now, what I do think happens then when it does happen, maybe now it makes you aware, you start dealing with it. But now the thing becomes, are you looking for those same signs in different areas of your life? And most people just think, oh, it's just that one thing, because it's really hard when it blows up and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to deal with this. But you're like, no, you probably got about 5, 6, 7, 8 more of those in there that you need to start looking at the signs that actually lead you down that road.
Mm-hmm. How do you believe that somebody can help a friend or a boss who has things that are exploding all around them and they just aren't aware of it? The friend around them or coworker around them is aware of it. Yeah. How do you help somebody navigate that?
Dang, Bree, is this your time of telling me I got some stuff you're still talking about?
No.
No.
You will always have that map in front of you trucking away for the rest of your life. I never have to worry about that.
I think how you help someone is, I think first, people have to want it. I think our job is to ask them that. I have been notoriously bad at this because I see it. You know, like I actually see IEDs really well, like for people, or when they're about to like kind of, that's a thing you need to look at. But I think what you can do is start trying to fix or do things, and people don't really want that. So I think the first thing you have to do, you have to ask. You have to just be able to go to someone and say, hey, I'm noticing some stuff. Would you interested in me like talking to you about that? Because I think it could end up being very harmful in the future. But again, it's like, I don't want you to feel, whatever. And then what you do is you have to be really honest. Now, being honest is like, I think you have to be really, so this is very practical. You have to be really clear. And you can be, because, again, clarity is kindness, right? You have to be clear with someone. So make sure when you go in, you know what you want to say. Make sure when you go in, if you're the type of person when you get in front of somebody, you get really like, God, I don't want to I'm this way. I'm on a stage. I am as bold, as crazy saying stuff as possible. When I get one-on-one with somebody, because I really care for them, I find myself being a little bit more like, I'm thinking it's kind, but I'm being very unclear because I can't say it that harsh. I can't say it this way. So I'll just kind of, and they walk away even more confused of what's going on because I wasn't clear. So I would say be really clear. You can be kind, empathetic, but very clear. They should never walk away saying, man, well, what really was happening? And then once you do that, you have to know that that was your job and you're not responsible for their response. If you do that and they choose to like justify or say, well, yeah, but da-da-da-da, you have to read the room. If you're constantly telling them things and you give them evidence, it's clear evidence, and this person said that, and they keep doing that, then what they're saying to us is that, yeah, I'm not really wanting to get better at that for whatever reason right now. And then what you have to do is then let them be. And, and there was sometimes life will have to teach them, whether it's they have to be let go or, man, something else has to blow up. They have to lose an account. They get a demotion, whatever. Something will eventually get their attention, because after a while you just, hopefully they'll get it. But sometimes people don't. Sometimes people always blame other people. But again, your job is to ask them if they want help, be really clear and kind, and then after that, after you give them the information, knowing that like you're not responsible for their reaction.